I'm Michael D.J. Eisenberg, host of the Tech Savvy Lawyer podcast and a speaker at the ABA Tech Show 2026. I had the privilege of serving on a panel this year titled Podcasting for Lawyers, The Truth Behind the Mic, alongside with moderator Ruby Powers and fellow panelists Gyi Tsakalakis and Stephanie Everett. In this live session from March 26, 2026, we walk through the real-world tech workflows and ethics considerations that go into running a law-related podcast that eventually supports your practice. If you've wondered what gear you really need, how to fit podcast production into a busy calendar, how to keep episodes aligned with bar advertising and confidentiality rules, and how podcasting ties into SEO, GEO, and business development, you're in the right place. Let's go behind the mic.
I'm really grateful to be on this panel with other experienced podcasters. We have Gyi Tsakalakis, Michael D.J. Eisenberg, and Stephanie Everett, and myself. I started my podcast 2 years ago. But before we get into the meat of everything, I want us to learn a little bit more about what type of podcast they have and what's the frequency that you record, that you post your podcast, what type of audience do you have, and who's your ideal listener, who's your avatar, and then we can go into some more details. And then we'll have some time for some questions. So, E, do you want to go ahead and get started?
Sure. Thanks, Ruby. I'm Gyi Tsakalakis. I'm co-host of the Lunch Hour Legal Marketing podcast. We're right over there. My infamous co-host, Conrad Som's over there as well. I'm a licensed lawyer. I also own a digital marketing agency. I inherited the co-hosting from Jared Correa for Lunch Hour Legal Marketing back in 2018. It's on the Legal Talk network. So there's a bunch of different shows. I think we're all going to share kind of our different experiences. Our target audience is lawyers mostly, and legal marketing people, in-house legal marketers, and marketing technology people. We podcast twice a month, and then we just upped it to weekly. And what something we'll talk about is the podcast is one of the mediums that Lunch Hour Legal Marketing takes, but we also record video, which I encourage folks to do because the short form social clips are really effective to market the show. So people will see something on Facebook or LinkedIn and then go and learn more about it and subscribe. And our primary purpose for it, candidly, we do have sponsors, but the reason that's valuable to me is because it's a big business development tool for our agencies. And we also work with a lot of lawyers that do podcasting from a networking and business development standpoint, so we'll talk more about that as we dive into it.
I'm Michael D.J. Eisenberg. I podcast at the Tech Savvy Lawyer. I interview lawyers, judges, and others in the legal arena about how they use technology to improve their practice, enhance their services for their clients, and also try to recapture time for themselves. The trick about podcasting is you've got to be consistent. Ideally, I release every other week, then my downloads will not just at that moment, but over time. And so I'll see numbers go up month to year to year sometimes as the podcast is out there, more people find it. Say the question, frequency?
Frequency means ideal client, or ideal avatar.
You see, he and Stephanie are searching out specific client perhaps for their practice. Maybe not. I'm more interested in talking to the lawyers and the judges. I'm not looking to grow my practice. I represent veterans regarding disability benefits appeals. So that is not necessarily my target for the practice, but even though it's not, it does help with the SEO and the GEO in getting your name out there, getting you to rise up in the levels of the searches, becoming an authority, and whether it's an authority in one area versus another, they'll end up bleeding together. So podcast about something that you want to podcast about. It may be legal related, it may not be. But regardless of what you're doing, you're still helping your social media when it comes to your law practice.
Yeah, and I'm Stephanie, co-host of the Lawyerist podcast. Zach over there, getting pictures, also runs the show with me. We are on episode 600 something, and it's a long time. I don't even know how many years now. I was try to do the math, but I'm not going to do that math. It's a weekly show. We drop every Thursday morning with a new episode, and it's geared for lawyers, and we talk about how do you create a practice that you love, that doesn't suck the life out of you, So we talked to business owner, we talked to a lot of business, to lawyers, but also business book authors and health advisors. I mean, we kind of cover everything from healthy lawyer and addiction and gambling and eating healthy to running your business and marketing, to finances. Our finance shows are very popular. We have people come and break down how do you read a P&L. So it really is geared to you guys. And probably it introduces people to the work that we do with lawyers. So there is definitely a marketing angle for us. It was audio only until about 2 years ago. Now it's got the video. Video is key. If you're going to start a podcast, I'd say it's almost essential that you're also on video. Our numbers went way up when we added the video component.
I think my podcast is the youngest out of everyone. Mine's about 2 years and a few months old. I just checked. We have 106 episodes. We drop every Tuesday afternoon, so it's weekly. I have a business called Power Strategy Group where we do law practice management, small business consulting, and a book called Power Up Your Practice, the same name as the book, as the podcast. And so our avatar is very similar to lawyers' podcasts with law firm owners, managing attorneys, those who want to start their firm, those who want to improve their firm. And so we have a variety of guests from lawyers to other, I would say, like vendors, like HR, psychologists, bookkeepers, things like that, to give that feedback. I do have a lot of legal tech guests, so I've debated on whether I need to change the title of the podcast because I'm really involved with the tech show, and so a lot of the people that I interact with. But I think this is just a very important topic at the moment. And so I'm really grateful that I do it, but it does take a lot of time. But sometimes it gives me joy because my other job is I'm an immigration attorney. So I have an immigration law firm. And so in my situation, it's a little similar to Michael's because my law firm, I'm not looking for other clients for my podcast, but my goal is to help share ideas and inspiration for other law firm owners. So let's go to anyone, but let's keep going around. Who helps you get it organized? How much time do you spend, prepping? Do you go out looking for the guest? Do you always have a guest? That type. Oh, I forgot, mine's on video too, and we started with video initially. But yeah, those type of logistical things, because I think that's what keeps people from wanting to get started. They get overwhelmed by all these details.
Sure, so the good news is that the technology is really amazing. I mean, for video, you can even just use your iPhone, honestly. I use a Shure MV7 mic. I think audio quality is probably the most important thing. And there's a couple $100 for that, but if you're going to have a regular show, people are more sensitive, I think, to the audio quality than they are to the video quality. Process-wise, I think something that's interesting to think about, and if you're thinking about your own podcast as an opportunity to consider, is whether you kind of do this yourself or you get production help. So our show, like I mentioned, is on the Legal Talk Network. So Legal Talk Network handles our production, so all the post-editing. But for my investment of time, there's my co-host Conrad right there. We have a rundown sheet. We have a consistent format. I think format's an important thing to consider as well, because again, the point of this consistency, you'll hear this theme a lot, but people who are listening, they like the consistency, the regularity of the dropping of the episodes, the similar format. Like we do a news section, and then we do 2 different segments that cover different topics. Anyway, so our process is throughout the week, we gather interesting things from news, we drop it in the rundown sheet, and that kind of starts to shape the topics for that week or that episode. We get together, we do a pre-show production meeting, which is basically an hour, and then we're budgeted an hour to actually do the recording, but we typically try to keep the post-production recording about 30 minutes. And so for me, on a week-to-week basis of committed podcast time, it's probably about 2 hours, but keep in mind, I don't do any of the post-production editing, and I think others that have that experience can share that. But I think it's an important thing to keep in mind. But the good news is to get up and running, it's really affordable and easy to do. We host on Libsyn. I think you can talk about that. But for me, I'm just really the co-host of the show. We have somebody else that handles it, but there are companies that will support lawyers in helping do the production. So if time is an issue for you and you're concerned about the upskilling to be able to actually do audio and video recording, that might be an option for you to consider getting some help.
So I have more of a DIY approach. I have a staff of 3, me, myself, and I, and we're pretty busy. So everything from coming up with potential guests, emailing potential guests, getting them scheduled, to recording, to the post-production. I do have someone I will send some audio for production to a Fiverr or one of those services that you can get, for a couple $100 a month to assist you on certain stuff. But the problem is, I still got to go through the initial production and make sure there are certain things in there that I want, that I don't want. And because of that delay, sometimes I just end up being the one producing the rest. But to go back to something that Gyi was saying, you have the equipment to start a podcast. You don't need to get the most expensive mic. You've got your earbuds. You just need a solid mic. You need to be able to listen to the audio as it goes in so that you don't have echoing. You have Zoom that can do the recording both of audio and video. I'm still doing audio, not as an issue of growth, but because I want to make sure that my guest feels comfortable. But I can still repurpose that audio into video. And especially with AI today, you can make some sort of animated conversation going on or have something interesting in the background to put onto YouTube. Because believe it or not, most people, I'm not saying all people, I'm not even saying like a huge majority, I'm saying many people are going to YouTube to listen, not necessarily watch, but to listen to their podcasts.
I'm fortunate that I have a team, and so we have someone on our team that's the producer. We meet once a month, the host and the producer, and everyone at the company can submit ideas. So we filter through those guest ideas once a month. We're trying to schedule out 3 or 4 months if we can. We want to have, nobody wants who's going to be on the show next week. That's not a good place to be in. So we're trying to work pretty far in advance, and our producer handles then all that scheduling. Because I think that's probably what takes a lot of work, is like reaching out to the guest, and then you got to follow up, and are you available? Okay, we schedule a sound check. We think it's really important that our guests show up with the right tech. They don't always, if I'm being really honest, and it degrades the quality of our show. So they often are like, I'm good, and we're like, well, let's just make sure the technology is going to work. And we've told people we can't record today, like you sound terrible. It's a thing. Like I literally had someone show up and there was a jackhammer going off behind them. And I'm like, nobody wants to listen to that. So sorry, we're gonna have to reschedule. And that's tough to do. So we try to insist that they have a sound check with our producer, make sure it's working. And then I'm just showing up and getting to do the interview. We also are with LTN, but we've had different people do that post-production in the past. Like you said, there's companies that do that. So luckily then the post-production team takes it, they make all the magic happen, and I get to listen to the show on Thursday.
So usually what happens is I have a few themes I want to get across. And I realize sometimes I lean on one theme more than another, like legal tech, for example. And I'm like, we need more on these topics because we need to round it out. I do try to get feedback from my listeners, but it takes a bit to get, we're still a younger podcast. We're still trying to do that. I hired a company to help me the first 12 episodes, and then we figured out how to do it, and then I have an internal assistant that helps me do it. We record, and I think we forgot to mention this, we use StreamYard, Riverside.
We use Riverside for some of our episodes, and we also use StreamYard because my thing with it, and this is one of my messages, is it's not about the medium, it's the message. And so the podcast is like one medium, but especially because time is so valuable, if you can record once and then chop it up and distribute it to all these social platforms, doing live stream, you can do live stream. So anyway, to the point on technology, we use StreamYard for live streaming. We've done a couple other things we've used in the past. You can even use GarageBand, which is like the default recording on your MacBook. We've used Descript, it's a really powerful tool if you want to try that one out. And so, they all have got their benefits, but I'm not a pro on the reasons why each of these, recording separate tracks is important, especially if you're going to edit in post-production. So something like Riverside's valuable for that. But honestly, we've used Zoom in the past too. So.
What program do you use to record?
My staff. Okay, well, that's going to be a lot of fun. So,
I just wanted the program. We can go back to you for tech stack because you have a pretty extensive tech stack.
You want me to pass?
Do you use Riverside, Zoom?
So for hosting, I use Libsyn.
Okay.
So that they host and keep my podcasts on the internet live. And I use Descript to edit everything. I use Zoom for our interviews, for recordings. And I use Buffer to help push out to all the different platforms my podcast. So using something like Buffer will take away a lot of the time invested of going from one to another podcast host, which is at least 15, if not more. And I forgot who I was talking to. but they were telling me like they did it themselves. Like they just went and did it here and did it there. I'm like, that takes so much time. Just use something like Buffer and other services and find the one that's right for you.
I feel like Zach should come answer. I think it's Riverside. I mean, we use Riverside. If we use other tools beyond that, I have no idea. They do magic.
So what we do for scheduling, going back to answering that other question, we just have a Calendly link and they can see the future of our calendar availability. We try to have about 4 to 6 episodes saved up in case somebody cancels on us. Because I do run a law firm, I usually record on Tuesday afternoons, my 2 and 3 p.m. slot. I block off an hour for that tech purpose because usually the first 5 to 10 minutes is just making sure that their tech works. And I never really understood how podcasters and radio people were so snobby about sound until I got further along this journey. And some of my colleagues here were giving me advice. One particular giving me advice on what I needed to do to improve my tech stack, and I appreciate that. But now that I listen to other people's productions, I'm like, you can tell when they're using good mics, headsets. I also have sound absorbing tiles around me because my office is next to a highway, but honestly, I think it works out because I have the headset and the mic. I do solicit people reach out to me to want to be on my podcast. At first I thought it was like an honor, but then I'm like, sometimes like I have to go back to true to who's my audience and who do I want as a guest. So I'm fine with saying no because I want to make sure that I meet the needs of my my listeners. We use StreamYard. I thought that I was doing something wrong because everyone seemed to be using Riverside, but I realized people still use StreamYard. And what I do is afterwards, it'll say, do you want to generate clips? And that's so much fun because then you get these, 1-minute clips and they're like the most viral version or whatever. You can put the keywords and then you can use that to keep us saying about recycling, or you can also use it to promote. Okay, we have the internal team and they've got it figured out for the most part, but I think it's about getting into that rhythm and constantly doing that. Did you want to talk more about your tech stack?
Well, actually, I wanted to jump to something that you hinted at is there are services out there that will quote unquote find podcasts for you to be a guest on. And mind you, if you're still on the fence, want to start a podcast, be a guest on a podcast. Be a guest on several podcasts. See if you like it. See if you enjoy that kind of interaction. Because one of the nice things about being guests on a podcast or having guests on your own podcast is you get to network and talk to and meet people that you never would have thought about. Personally, I get a lot of questionable guest requests from the companies, not all the companies, and I'm not going to name any companies, that really aren't doing the research. And I have a text snippet that says, thank you for the inquiry. I'm not quite sure seeing the fit. Can you explain to me how this guest would be an appropriate guest on my podcast? And if you have some
nicer than me.
Well,
Mine doesn't say that.
but I also say at the end, if this person doesn't work out, that's okay. But if you have someone else who would fit what I'm looking for, and I give a description of what I'm looking for, but it's also a text snippet because I'm using it a lot.
You were going to mention guesting. Is there anything else you wanted to add about that?
Yeah, I think this is a good kind of rule of thumb in general from a content creation standpoint. Is, think about what you're really trying to accomplish, because that will shape what direction, what decisions you make in a lot of this stuff. But trying to eat my own dog food here. If you're sitting there and you're a lawyer and you're at TECHSHOW and you're thinking about doing a podcast, or maybe you started a podcast, but you're not really sure it's worth it. My view is focus on delivering the objective of the podcast. And so if I'm a lawyer, maybe if I'm in the local community, maybe I'm interviewing other local business leaders as guests, but it's that cross-pollination of audiences. People want to hear from different voices. But if you don't have the time to do it, I think Michael's suggestion is a great one, is go be a guest on a lot of the podcasts that your audience is already consuming. So if there's a local sports podcast or a local politics podcast or a local business podcast, those types of things, reaching out to them and being like, hey, I listened to your podcast. You were talking about this particular topic. I've got a lot to say on that if you want to schedule a time. And a lot of podcasts, especially if it's a guest show, they want guests. And so if you approach it and you're not trying to do it in a spammy way, and you're reaching out, it's a really effective way to build new relationships with people in a context where they don't feel like you're trying to sell them on your services, or you're not even necessarily talking about law. It's just networking in a medium that becomes more permanent, that's now distributed in all these different places, where people that might be potential clients for you will get to know who you are. Maybe they'll, if you have your own podcast, maybe they subscribe to it, maybe they subscribe to an email newsletter. But it's a really effective way for building relationships in local communities.
So how do you know who your listeners are? How do you stay true to your ideal avatar, anyone, and how do you communicate or do you interact with your listeners?
Well, quite honestly, I started the blog 6-7 years ago because for well over a decade and a half, my wife had been on my case about starting a hobby. And I sort of had this idea of this blog. And I went to my first tech show, I think in 2019, and I ended up talking with several people, including retired Chief Judge Herbert Dixon, who used to be on the Tech Show board, I believe. And he gave me some great ideas, and I started a blog, and now I'm doing a podcast. And I'm doing the podcast because I enjoy it. And if I get some SEO, GEO benefits from it, fantastic. And I'm finding that I'm really enjoying it. I think that's coming across, and I get some really nice compliments. I haven't gotten any negative feedback, but I'm sure, I'd still like to hear constructive criticism. And how do I know who my audience is? Well, with Libsyn and other hosts, they will tell you where your listeners are coming from. If you get, in all respect, 1,000 downloads or listens from China, I have a feeling that might be a bot. That might not be a real listener. There may be one or two in there, but I know where they're coming from. I don't get things like the age dynamics. I don't get are they a professional, or are they a student, are they a doctor? But when you then cross-post, say, on LinkedIn will give you a little bit further granular information. This is a professional in this type of area, or it's coming from this particular geolocation, this is the type of profession, or this is even the age group. So if you cross-pollinate your podcasts in different, not only platforms, but forms, video, audio, clips, long form, etc., you'll just simply grow that audience, and it will naturally feed on each other.
I just would tell everybody, really be thoughtful about your audience. If you're a lawyer starting a podcast, who do you want to talk to? Because I have had lawyers come up to me before and say, I'm thinking of starting a podcast to generate business, and then they tell me 17 ideas that they want to talk about, and I'm like, who's your audience? What are you trying to do? So I know lawyers who've started podcasts, like PI lawyers, who start podcasts for other lawyers with the idea that will send referrals. So they're not looking to talk to their client, they're looking to talk to referral sources. I have another lawyer, she started a podcast on local businesses, and she's going to interview those local businesses in her community, and she represents businesses, so she can talk about that. So I think before you get started, and I have another lawyer I'll just throw out I work with, he has prenups.com, so he decided not to start his own podcast, but he made a mission to get on 50 of the top financial podcasts and relationship podcasts and wedding podcasts, because he's talking to people about why you need to think about prenups differently. So he has a message that I'm not going to do my own, I'll just go get on others. So again, like with everything, be strategic, be intentional. If you love it, that's great, and have fun with it, but also be thoughtful.
Who's the attorney, like James Cohen or something, that's on there that's doing all the political podcasts, but from a legal perspective? And, he soft sells his practice, which is not political in nature. And they're really well done productions.
Yeah.
And I know it's generating a lot of SEO and GEO for him. So if you're having fun with it and you do a decent job about it, and trust me, when I say decent job, if I listen to my first podcast compared to my 50th, to my 100th, etc., there's been improvement from mics, recording systems, etc. So don't worry about being perfect the first time, because you won't, and that's okay.
And I'm assuming that you're doing this for business purposes. If you just want to have a hobby and love it, then, go for it, be crazy, pick whatever you want. But I'm assuming that you're thinking about your law firm and how do I generate business. That would be my advice for you. Because a lot of lawyers are like, should I just start a podcast? And I'm like, I don't know. Who's your audience? Who are you trying to target? Like I say, when they say, should I be on Twitter or any fill in the blank, we always come back to those strategy questions.
But the thing is also, as they mentioned, it's a hobby. I'm slowly turning it into a business. But you have to be authentic. And if you're not enjoying what you're doing, it's going to come across. Because not only does this get you out there in the internet world of content generation and eyes, it also gives ears. And your potential clients are going to hear and see how you act, behave, and integrate with others. And that will help ideally sell you as their next attorney for that particular issue.
I was just going to add in the context of trying to understand your audience. We regularly ask audience members for feedback, topic suggestions, questions. I think Michael or Stephanie might have mentioned, but when people engage with your content online, the platforms have built-in analytics data. And so if I take a short form clip from a podcast episode, put it on LinkedIn, and then I see people interacting with it, I can see who's interacting with it and who's resonating. So you get a directional sense of who your audience members are. And in fact, our podcast gained enough community around it that people wanted to actually meet other listeners and meet us and meet some of the people that we talk about on the show. And so we do a conference now that we invite people who listen to the podcast to come, and we've been amplifying guest voices and some of the companies that our businesses work with. And so again, for me, this has just been a really powerful tool in terms of meeting more people, developing new relationships. And I would say this too, because again, I keep trying to put myself in a lawyer's position. Should I do this? Is it worth the time? If I'm using it for business development, does this make sense? And how am I going to track whether this is working? Getting the attribution stuff. And I would encourage you to do this, even if you don't do a podcast. When people contact you, ask them how they heard about you. I think we're really coming full circle, especially with the ways that legal services consumer journeys are really fragmented. Some people will start their journey on ChatGPT, some will start the referral to a friend and then go online. But the most valuable, in my opinion, attribution data is to hear someone that actually contacts us and say, I've been a listener to the podcast for 5 years. And again, I'm not trying to do a one-for-one, but when you hear that coming up, or people come up to you and they're like, hey, I listened to your episode on this thing, or they shoot you a message, those are the touch points that I'm looking for to say, oh, this is actually doing something. People are listening to this and doing something positive for my business as well.
I want to remind people, it doesn't have to be perfect when you start. One of my assistants that was helping me, she said, you need to have it all planned out and you need to think, and she freaked me out, honestly, because I was overthinking it. And it's sort of like how Michael was saying, his podcast, the quality and everything got better over time. Just start it if you want to do it, and then you can keep tweaking and improving and buying better tech and hiring people to help you and you learn. And also, Michael's been telling me about PodFest. There's the
podcast conferences, PodFest being one of them, which is held in Orlando, Florida, I think every January, February, where you're going to be around a bunch of independent, solo podcasters, not legal podcasters, but podcasters. And it's great to network and learn about the craft.
Reason why I do it, sort of moving into ROI and is it worth it? I truly enjoy it. My immigration practice is very depressing, super depressing. So this is my joy. I'm talking to people I want to talk to about things I want to talk about. It's almost like having a virtual coffee, and in this world where we're just so busy, we like things on LinkedIn or Facebook, but we never really sit down and have a conversation. This really helps. And then the other thing is on Tuesdays, it's my law practice management day. After I record 2 episodes, I usually go teach my law practice management class. And so I'm learning, I'm talking to other people in the field, and I'm bringing it back to my class and my writing. I also added a resilience series because I had heard so many great stories at some conferences, and I wanted to help encourage other people who are overcoming some challenges. So I'm having fun with that series too.
Ruby, based on your comment regarding a virtual coffee, if you recall, that's how you and I were able to actually catch up.
That's true.
Because you're so busy, but when you schedule a time for a podcast recording, even with a friend or a colleague, it gives you that chance just to catch up.
It's a great community, and then after you've had someone on your podcast, you sort of feel like they're another level of friend to you in a way, that you have a special relationship. I give them a mug for the most part after being on the podcast. And actually, I bumped into Michael at a legal tech conference, and he was wearing his yellow hat. And I was like, I think I know you. And then before we knew it, we recorded an episode on his podcast because he had travel gear with him. And then we've been staying in touch ever since.
That's at Filevine.
Yeah.
In Utah.
A couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool opportunity to meet some really cool people. Because we also interview business book authors, I've gotten to interview some pretty cool, well-known people. Alicia Menendez is an MSNBC correspondent. She wrote a book for women where she called it the Cinderella syndrome. Women have to, if you're too powerful, you're the B word. If you're not powerful enough, you're not, And by the end of that episode, I was like, I think we'd be friends in real life, right? You and I are cool. And every time I turn on MSNBC and she's on, I tell my family, I'm like, that's my friend Alicia, because I feel connected to her. So it's a cool way to get to do, I wouldn't normally get to talk to these folks. And it also still freaks me out when I go to conferences. I was at Clio last year and I was talking to someone and someone came up to me and was like, "You're Stephanie, right? I know your voice," and that still is you. But to your point, you are putting yourself out there in public, and people will say things to me about my personal life and I'll forget that I have talked about it on the show because I'm like, why? Why do they know that about me? But you've got to be comfortable, and it is the last thing I would kind of say on this point. I have a 15-year-old, and I was talking to a friend who came over, and her friend, and there's a podcasting club at high school now. And I was like, that's so cool, you know, I have a show. And he was like, oh, I listen to you. And my kid was like, what? He's like, I follow you on Insta. And so now my kid is mortified. She's, my friends listen to my mom. Like, why? And I was like, dude, you can't, I'm famous, you know, whatever.
I mean, that's pretty cool, honestly. I was going to mention the parasocial relationship where people who watch and listen to someone who's frequently producing content, they feel like they know you, and it's for these reasons, but it also has an impact on your marketing as well. He and I were talking earlier, what I noticed is that, like in my immigration space, when my clients have seen me on TV, or in the news or whatever, it's basically already going to hire me. It's just a formality to have the consultation. So it does create a different dynamic. And I just wanted to mention before opening up more is that this reminds me of something that Jordan Furlong just said about the human lawyer and how we're able to show who we are and our humility and our personality and can build that rapport with our audience. So maybe we could, one last round on any closing thoughts or ROI and why you do it, is it worth it? And then we can take some questions.
Yeah, I think the two themes for me, aside from all the tech stuff, is, and I think everybody's mentioned it here, but one, like, you really do have to like it. If it feels like a chore to do, you're going to sense it in the production quality, because you're going to be like, this person doesn't want to be here and no one wants to listen to somebody. But if you're finding topics that you're really passionate about, and you're finding guests that you have a good time with, you're having fun, like, human beings like to hear other human beings, like, talking about their thing that they're passionate about and having a great conversation with somebody. Maybe they learn something. But, you know, our clients, until it's just agents talking to agents, are humans. And humans hire people and gravitate towards people that they know and trust. Like, we've known this forever. It's why we talk about networking. It's why we talk about all this stuff. Relationships, it's a relationship and reputation business. And podcasting gives you a vehicle to meet, but I guess a parasocial relationship with a very wide audience. And so, to Ruby's point, we see this all the time for our business. People say, I've been listening to you for years. I'm already convinced that you know what you're talking about because I've been listening to you. And so I think that just totally changes the dynamic of an intake or, doing a potential client call when there's already that built-in know, like, and trust, and a lot of it coming from podcasts and other media that you put out there.
One soft point and then one depressing point. The soft point is, just to follow what Gyi was saying, is that my podcast usually release at 20 to 40, 50 minutes, but I've had recording sessions last as long as 2 hours just because I was enjoying the interviewee and I were just enjoying the conversation of what we were talking about. Now, if you will, and I apologize, on the slightly depressing point, please remember we still have to follow your model rules when you're podcasting. 1.1, comment 8, and Rule 7.1 through 7.3 with regards to advertising. And above all, I think client confidentiality is 1.6. If you're going to tell stories about your practice, you need to make sure you're not identifying your clients by name or their PII, or the facts just maybe a little too similar, because the last thing you want to worry about is not only your bar license in your state, but your effect in other states, and have those bars come after you. So if you're doing your stuff and you're doing your due diligence, keep it kosher and follow the rules. And if you have a question, contact your bar association, because they usually have an 800 helpline of some sort that you can call and get some feedback and ideally some questions answered. And if not, perhaps reach out to one of us.
I'll just say I'm honored to do the show, and I try to keep all of you, the listeners, in mind. So every time I'm having a conversation, I'm always thinking, is this interesting? Is this helpful? Is somebody listening going to resonate? Are they going to, appreciate this? And it's a hard job. And sometimes the episodes fall flat. Like, some are home runs, and you're just so proud and can't wait for the episode to drop. And other times I think, oh, was that good? And then somebody will comment and say, no, no, I got a nugget from it. That was good. And I always appreciate that. So if any of you are listeners, or if you're not and want to start listening, come talk. Zach and I are here. I know I say this for everybody. We want to hear from you. What do you like? What topics do you want to hear? Because I really do feel like I'm just the steward, right? This is just my little contribution to the world, but I want it to be helpful for you guys. And yeah, it's just a joy to do. It really is.
Definitely agree. And same with my podcast. If you have any suggestions, feel free to tell me. I truly enjoy it, and I think mine's the youngest of the group, but I'm still seeing the fruits of the labor. It does take commitment, but what I do find with any other content creation I do with my law firm side is that the more I build it in and I create that habit, the more it's possible, and it's a normal thing that I do. And I block off that time to do it. I also found some really great relationships, and I know, like, when I go to big conferences like this, that usually people are coming up to me and saying, oh, I really like that podcast, and it's also a good opportunity to have the next, like, a call to action. I usually invite them to be on the podcast, if it makes sense, and I'm really grateful for that opportunity. So we have a little time for questions if anybody has. There's so many things we can talk about in terms of the technical. I even think about things which we didn't mention is like, where do you look on your screen? So you don't, if you're looking at the website, I noticed that on my YouTube, there's a glare when I change the screen, and then I'm like, is that annoying to my audience? And just to make it, there's a lot of little nuances to this too.
Riverside just came out with a adjust your eye. Okay. So Zach's just playing. I know, look at him, because it will make your eye look like it's looking in the right place.
Nice.
AI is already doing all kinds of funky stuff.
A tool I use is something called PlexiCam. It is basically a clear hook that goes over your monitor and allows you to nest your cam right there, so you can look straight at your monitor and perhaps put the person that you're talking to above, and some information below, and your notes to the left and the right, but you're always looking straight on without the AI. And the core just goes right over. It's very non-intrusive, and it's like a $30 piece of equipment.
If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, come up here. We have a mic. Yeah, you have a question?
Hi there. Thank you for the information. I'm pondering the idea of starting a podcast soon, and I'm bilingual, Spanish and English. Now I'm wondering, will I confuse my listeners if I start doing English and Spanish? I just want to get your take from it. There's a lot of data and AI information that people in Spanish need that it's been hard for them to get. But then in English, I want to chat with people like you, and you buy people in English too, so I want to hear your take from it.
Yeah, my 2 cents, and again, not without doing much more comprehensive background and thinking about it, I would probably do an episode in each language. So, and maybe it's almost 2 podcasts, because even though the technology is there for translation, if someone's going to subscribe to your podcast, you want it to be in the language that they are speaking or listening to. So I would probably think of it as 2 separate audiences. I'm going to have my English-speaking audience. I'm going to do it in English, and then do it in whatever other languages you want. It's a separate thing, but keep it consistent on those episodes, so that people aren't confused, or they're expecting English and they're not getting English, because then people will just be turned off, and everybody's got. It's an attention economy, right? It's if you create friction for people, they don't give you a lot of additional opportunities. They're like, I'm just going to go on to the next thing. And so I would probably do it both. And I think for social clips, having it in separate languages would be really valuable. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to serve communities that aren't English speaking. And so from a competitive standpoint, you can get much more reach by tapping into those audience segments.
Like it's been mentioned before, who's your audience? And perhaps you might want to just record it twice, once in English, once your language Spanish, which is one way to do it. Another way to consider is, well, if my target audience for one particular topic and podcast is in English, and my other podcasts, and I'm doing 2 different shows, do that one in Spanish. But like he said, you're probably going to have to record it twice.
Okay, I think we can always take more questions, but I wanted to bring up something. So as podcasters, we're in the media, and I've seen all of you have recorded at conferences. Do you want to mention something about what that dynamic looks like? Sometimes you pitch that you want to come, or sometimes they ask you to come, and what are you trying to accomplish when you're there? Because it is a place where there's a lot of people congregating, and so you can knock out a lot of interviews, but you're also promoting where you're at.
I like to keep mine focused, and A lawyer once said to me, all lawyers want answers in threes or give answers in threes. So I have 3 questions, and for each question, get 3 answers. Sometimes we go off on a tangent, but it keeps it focused. And it's also the skill of the interviewer to ask the pointed questions to perhaps interrupt your guest if he or she is going in the wrong direction. We have the skills to pose someone, if you will, and also we have the skills, hopefully, to make it feel more natural and legal in the sense of that we're not grilling the guest, we're having a conversation with the guest.
Sure. So we actually have a table over there, and if you want to do an interview, or if you got something you want to talk about, we'd be happy to record with you. There's a scheduling thing. If you go to lunchhourlegalmarketing.com, you can sign up for a schedule. Like, just walk over there. I'm sure we'll make time for you. But to Ruby's point, we've been invited to several. To the shows. They're like, this is good. It's press coverage. It's good for the show. It's good for their audience. And again, Stephanie mentioned this, and I think this is like core point of all of this is like thinking about what's in it for listeners, what's in it for guests, what's in it for a show, what's in it for a company if you're going to use it as a vehicle to promote the company. But it's always about them, right? It's never like we're a conduit for those conversations to happen. And this is unique to us, and so again, I think depending on what the purpose of your podcasting is, we really try to cover the intersection of law practice, marketing, and technology. And we really try to do, we're not trained journalists, but we try to take a journalistic approach to it where we'll have competing viewpoints on the show at the same time. We've had people on the show that are actually, compete with our businesses, but we just think from an audience standpoint, that's it's more valuable. It's a more valuable, well-rounded conversation to hear a diversity of viewpoints, people coming from different angles, not the same voices that you hear. And so we really try to make an effort to amplify people that, might not be invited to speak at a conference, but have something that we think is important to say and to help them amplify that message.
We didn't really talk about costs. There are some costs involved. Some of us do have sponsors, that's a thing. So we sell to a lot of the folks that you see over there. They'll buy opportunities we used to run 30-second mid-reel, what we call mid-show commercials. And then we started doing a 6-minute sponsored conversation. But we ask the people to give us content. Just don't come on and give a pitch. How can you because I still want to help you, my listeners. So if you're going to come on the show, you can do a pitch at the end, but I want to hear valuable content first. And we asked our listeners, and they were like, yeah, we really like that 6-minute segment much better than a 30-second commercial. So we sell those now. We also sometimes sell an entire sponsored episode. Those drop on Tuesdays, and they always say sponsored. So you as the listener would know it's different, but again, we're taking the same approach. You need to come on and deliver and then make a pitch at the end. Don't just come on and pitch. Nobody wants to hear that. So I say that, and while our show is monetized, again, Gyi and I were like, what we should tell you guys is this isn't going to get you rich. This isn't going to be like the podcast is now dropping buckets of money in our account overnight. It's not doing that. So it pays for itself pretty much. Where our value comes is obviously some people listen and learn, oh, you help lawyers build a healthier law practice. Let me see what it's like to work with you. And like he said, when they come on, they know, trust, and like us. If they tell me they're a podcast listener, it's like easy in the sales bucket, because you're like, okay, so this is just more of a formality, or they have some questions. It's not, wait, what do you guys do? You know what we do because you listen to us each week. So just to kind of talk about that sponsorship element.
But that's a good point. We have some sponsors, but we're still looking for them as well. And, I think it's a labor of love, or depending on what your budget is, but we can do a lot of it with just a little grease and a little bit of tech. And I think that, depending on how you want to grow over time. But for me, it's also getting the word out about my book and other retreats and consulting and courses. And so it's all a part of the ecosystem. And so that really comes down to what's your goal and what you're trying to accomplish. And I think we didn't mention sort of like the formula of our, the flow, but you mentioned something along those lines, Michael. And for me, it's a little intro just to get to connect, but not your whole life story. I know some podcasts, it's like your journey. And then we try to have a theme that's sort of like a takeaway. So they could say, so-and-so about this. And so they can choose, do you want to listen to this or not? What am I going to get out of it? And then I have some fun fact questions at the end. I just have fun with that. What's your favorite board game? And a book and a habit that contributes to your success. And then I close up. But that pretty much, I've got it timed down so I can get it done by the top of the hour. Well, and I know, Michael, you have a really great resource that you want to mention as we're closing up.
So back in January, I released my first book, The Lawyer's Guide to Podcasting. basic how-to for lawyers. I mean, anyone can use it to start a podcast, but it talks about everything about coming up with ideas, the equipment you can use, and I talk about graduating the equipment from, the inexpensive to the expensive. I talk about the platforms, I talk about repurposing, and most importantly, I have 70 pages in the back, all on ethics rules, not only across the United States, but in some international places too, including Europe. So we got to be mindful of what we're saying, what we're releasing, and don't freak out if you say something on your podcast that maybe shouldn't be there, because you can always edit it out. Remember, you get to be the person who pushes the button before it goes up to the internet, and you have control. And trust me, talking about sounding not so great throughout your first podcast, you can edit that stuff down. And the better editing I've been doing, the better the podcasting.
How many of you have a podcast? Okay, awesome. Okay, well, hopefully we covered a lot. And how many of you want to be on somebody's podcast here? All right, so this is a good chance to go connect. We have our contact information. Just real quick, what would be the best way to reach you and connect?
LinkedIn or Stephanie at Lawyerist, and Zach and I have some cards if you want to take it. It has some recent AI episodes and a QR code. So if you want to check out, we talk about a lot of legal tech, grab one of those index cards from Zach.
You can reach me by email at michaeldj@TheTechSavvyLawyer.page. You can find me on LinkedIn. I've got some contact information up here if you'd like that. And I look forward to talking with all of you.
And you can certainly reach out to me at lunchhourlegalmarketing.com, but like I said, we're right over there. We got a QR code which populates an email, so you can send us emails, topics, suggestions, you want to be a guest, or learn more about what we do for podcasting. I'm happy to answer any questions. And thank you genuinely so much for coming. I really appreciate your time and attention.
And mine is pretty much LinkedIn up here, or you can email me and we can connect with our company Power Strategy Group, and we have a lot of different events coming up and consulting events, retreats. So thank you so much for joining us. Feel free, we have lunch after this, so it's a good time to come talk and to share, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for watching this Tech Savvy Lawyer presentation of the ABA Tech Show panel, Podcasting for Lawyers, the truth behind the mic. If you found it helpful, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share with a colleague who's considering a podcast. For more conversations with lawyers, judges, and other professionals about how they use technology to improve their practices, and for deeper dives into podcasting workflows and ethics, visit me at TheTechSavvyLawyer.page at www.TheTechSavvyLawyer.page. I'm Michael D. Eisenberg, and I'll see you next time behind the mic.